What's going on, guys? Josh Baldwin here from Mad Millennial. In today's video, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about a speech that President Biden did yesterday in Irvine, California, where he talks about how he plans on lowering healthcare costs for seniors. And the way he plans on doing that is through some provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act that he recently signed into law. Let's take a listen.
Look, I'm here today because I want to share the progress we're making to bring down the healthcare costs for everybody. And thanks to Democrats in Congress like Lou and also Katie. And Katie's, Katie's just been a star. You can tell she's not passionate about much, and you can tell she's a retiring soul. But all kidding aside, a policy whiz who knows how to talk to folks, a fighter who's taken on the powerful special interest. And we've seen it all. No drug company executive wants to testify in Congress before Katie. Nobody wants to do that to answer her questions, because they're to the point and they're revealing. Katie's is a big reason why I've been able to make such progress dealing with health care. And that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. I know it's been a tough 4 or 5 years for the country. We've made a lot of progress, but folks, a lot of folks are still struggling. Folks who came from the families I came from, where you sit around the kitchen table at the end of the month and wonder how in God's name we're going to pay for everything. Do we have enough? Well, I think about it the way my dad did. He used to talk about it in a way that so many of you at home still talk about it around that kitchen table or that dinner table. How much are the monthly bills? And how are we going to have to pay for all the necessities that extend beyond that? Is there enough left over? My dad used to use the phrase, for just a little bit of breathing room. My dad was a well-read, high school educated guy whose great regret was he never got to go to school. But he used to talk about everyone's entitled to be treated with dignity. And when you don't have the capacity to meet the basic needs of your children and your family, you're deprived of your dignity. You're deprived of your dignity. It's especially the case when it comes to health care and prescription drug costs. That's why Katie's leadership and the work of the Democrats in Congress is so consequential. And Katie, I'm not just being nice because I'm in your district. It happens to be true. No, I mean it. You are a fighter, you're decent, you're honorable, and everybody respects you. Everybody respects you, and it's a big deal because you get a lot done. I wrote and then signed into law the Inflation Reduction Act. They used to call it, in the press, poor people have to follow me all over the country. We heard me say it before. It used to be called Build Back Better, but we got almost all of it. That Inflation Reduction Act did a lot of things. It had just a short amount of money, $368 billion for the climate, which is, it did a whole range of things. But what it did was it took on special interests in a way that we haven't in a long time. I know I don't look it, but I've been around for a while.
All right, now before we get too much further into the video and before we give too much credit to the Democrats for solving all seniors' issues right before the midterm elections, let's take a look at what provisions are actually going to be included in the Inflation Reduction Act to help seniors. The first one is that it requires the federal government to negotiate prices for some Medicare drugs. Keyword some, all right? So not all Medicare drugs are subject to negotiation. 10 medications to start in 2026, rising to 20 in 2029. All right, so let's take a look at what are the top 10 most costly Medicare drugs for seniors. And I've got that list right here. So the top 10 most costly prescription drugs for seniors are the following. Number 1 is Eliquis, which is a blood thinner. This had a Medicare spending amount in 2020 of almost $10 billion, all right? So this is probably one of the most, if not the most expensive Medicare drugs. Number 2 is Revlimid at about half the Medicare spending cost of Eliquis at $5.4 billion. And this is used to treat cancer. Number 3 is Xarelto. And my apologies if I'm completely butchering these names. I am not involved in and I am not a member of the medical industry at all. Number 4 is Januvia, which is used to treat diabetes. Number 5 is Trulicity, also used to treat diabetes. Number 6 is Imbruvica, which is used to treat cancer. Number 7, Jardiance. Number 8 is the Humira pen. Number 9 is Ibrance. And number 10, Symbicort. All right, so these are some of the medications that are most likely going to be subject to negotiation starting in 2026. All right, heading back to our list here, as I mentioned, 10 medications are going to be subject to negotiation starting in 2026. All right, so this is not exactly the immediate help that seniors wanted, but they will start to see the reduced healthcare costs and the benefits of the Inflation Reduction Act starting in 2026. All right, so 4 years from now. Number 2 is that it caps seniors' out-of-pocket costs at $2,000 a year for Medicare's prescription drugs. All right, so the companies can't charge you more than $2,000 a year in total out-of-pocket costs for these drugs. Number 3 is that it requires rebates from drug companies if their prices increase faster than inflation. All right, so if pharmaceutical companies start to raise their drugs at a faster rate than inflation, they will owe rebates. Number 4 is that it expands eligibility for prescription drug benefits in the Part D low-income subsidy program. All right, so this will allow for more people in low-income neighborhoods and areas to qualify for these prescription drug benefits. The next one is that it caps monthly insulin copays at $35. Now, there are millions of seniors who need to take insulin, so this is definitely something that benefits a lot of people. The next one is that it makes vaccines free with no out-of-pocket costs. All right, so if we have another COVID strain next year, you won't need to pay for your vaccine. At least you won't have to pay any of those out-of-pocket costs. And last but not least, it limits Part D premium increases. All right, so whatever premium you have set for the year, it prevents these insurance companies from raising these premiums even higher. All right, let's get back to the video and see what else is going to be included in the Inflation Reduction Act to help seniors.
And it's one of the most significant laws in our history when it comes to helping families pay their bills at the end of the month. Look, take the prescription drug cost. We pay more for prescription drugs than any nation in the world for the same, not drugs generically, the same exact drug. The cost of that drug by the same company sold in France and the United States is sometimes 25% cheaper, or Canada, or any other place I can name for you. And there's no reason for it because Big Pharma has been just a dominant force. Katie laid out the numbers that they expended. For years, many of them have been trying to fix that problem. Why is it that, for example, the VA can negotiate drug prices with pharma? They say, we're not going to pay you more than A, B, C, or D, X amount for the The only exemption written into the law was that Medicare cannot negotiate the price of a drug with the drug companies, where they make billions of dollars through Medicare. For years, Big Pharma stood in the way. And for years, there's been no check on how high or fast pharma can raise drug prices. When I ran for this office, I ran on this platform. It's just not right. This year, drug companies alone.
And this is true. The Biden administration did originally run on the platforms of being able to improve Social Security and Medicare for all. But instead, what did we get? We got a bunch of unfulfilled promises and acts that were proposed in Congress but never went anywhere. If you guys recall, we had the $200 a month increase to Social Security benefits that Elizabeth Warren and Senator Bernie Sanders originally proposed last year. In addition to that, we had the Social Security Fairness Act of 2021 that was supposed to repeal provisions that reduce Social Security benefits for individuals who received other benefits such as pensions, and it was also supposed to eliminate the government pension offset and windfall elimination provision. The next act that never went anywhere but was introduced in Congress was the Social Security 2100 Act. Do you guys remember this one? This one was supposed to increase old age survivors and disability insurance benefits and was also supposed to increase the primary insurance amount, among other benefits. The last and final bill that I wanted to go over was the SSI Restoration Act of 2021. All right, this one was extraordinarily popular among my viewers last year, and this bill was supposed to increase how much benefits you were receiving if you were on SSI. I even wrote part of this bill. Just kidding. That's Miss Baldwin. All right, so that pretty much covers all the bills that were originally proposed by Congress but never got further than being introduced. All right, let's get back to the video.
Raise the price on 1,200 drugs above the rate of inflation. Not a single additional bit of information was injected into that drug. Not any more experimentation. Nothing new. Same exact drug. Same drug. and it gets increased. 1,200 of them, 1,200. The average price increase for those drugs is over 30%. 30%. In 2022, the price for one blood pressure drug that millions of Medicare beneficiaries rely on increased by over 500%. Who in God's name do they think they are? They thought they were impervious. They had so much power. You think I'm joking? We've been trying, a guy like me has been around the Senate a long time, been trying to take them on forever. And they're powerful. And people were afraid to take them on. Another drug used to treat autoimmune conditions increased just this year by $1,000. By $1,000. This is outrageous. But this year the American people won. We took on Big Pharma and we beat them finally. We beat them finally.
All right, so you just heard that President Biden mentioned that some drugs increased by a factor of $1,000 last year. Now, if we take a look at how other prescription drugs increased last year, it says that there were 1,216 products whose price increases during the 12-month period from July of 2021 to July of this year exceeded the inflation rate of 8.5%. The average price increase for these drugs was 31.6%. Some drugs in 2022 increased by more than $20,000, all right, or 500%. So a lot higher than the numbers that President Biden was mentioning just then. He was saying that some drugs increased by more than $1,000. There are some drugs that increased 20 times that last year. The Inflation Reduction Act, which introduces a new requirement for manufacturers to pay rebates to Medicare for Part D drugs. So we just took a look at that list for the top 10 most costly Medicare Part D drugs. This is supposed to make those manufacturers pay rebates if they increase the prices of these drugs faster than the rate of inflation. And this is designed to reduce the frequency and the size of the drug price increases. So it's essentially not supposed to stop it completely, but it's supposed to discourage the drug companies from raising the prices further. So it basically discourages the drug companies from raising the prices higher or faster than the rate of inflation. All right, so that's basically what the Inflation Reduction Act is supposed to do in terms of mitigating price increases for drugs. Let's get back to the video.
Now, if Big Pharma tries to raise drug prices faster than inflation, they're going to have to write a check to Medicare to cover the difference. Now, instead of that money going in the pockets of drug companies, it's going to go into the pockets in the form of lower drug prices in America. There's more money at the end of the month to pay for groceries, to get your car repaired, to buy your grandson a birthday present, whatever it is. The Inflation Reduction Act gives Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices. And seniors will see their out-of-pocket costs for drugs capped at $2,000 a year. If you're on Medicare, you cannot be charged more than $2,000 a year, no matter what drugs you get. I'm serious. It's a gigantic change. A gigantic change. My mother had the fortune of having two successful brothers and a sister. I was kind of the guy out, but anyway. But my mom lived with me after my dad died. And she used to sneak up to the drugstore to get her prescriptions because she didn't want us to know she didn't have enough money to pay for it. She wouldn't tell us. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. She didn't want anybody to know she did not have the money to pay for it. So finally went up and I made sure that whatever she had in her wallet, that's what the drugstore charged her because I gave them whatever they need. They had a card. My generic point is think of all the mothers and fathers out there like your mom was. All of them. Their pride is in the stake as well. These are the same people who taught us to stand up, don't complain, never explain in my house. Well, folks, whether it's expensive drugs, another drug they need to survive, we're talking about drugs that cost $9,000, $10,000, and $14,000 a year, particularly cancer drugs. The Inflation Reduction Act caps that cost and caps the cost of insulin. How many of you know someone, and maybe many of you, that need that insulin for diabetes? Well, you know how much it costs for them to make that insulin and package it? $10 dollars. $10 total. They're charging. up to $400 to $1,000, depending on where you live, for that drug. I was in Virginia about 4 or 5 months ago and doing a town hall, and a woman stood up and she started to cry. She said, "My 2 kids have diabetes, and we have to cut the pills in half. We have to share the insulin. Excuse me. We have to share it." She said, imagine being a parent, not having enough insurance, not being able to afford it, and looking at your son or daughter and knowing if they don't get that insulin, they could literally permanently be scarred and or die. What does that do to people? What's it do? Folks, the Inflation Reduction Act caps the cost of insulin as $35 a month instead of $400 a month.
Well, it's about time, because seniors have been waiting for years and years and years, and they keep just changing the name of the bill and putting these benefits in the new bill and saying that it's going to get done. So it's great that this is finally going to be addressed in the Inflation Reduction Act, all right?
Now, what Katie didn't tell you, she got in the House passed, it applied to everyone, not just to Medicare patients. Well, the Senate, they kicked out coverage for non-Medicare patients. So there's 200,000 kids out there that you have to pay a hell of a lot for their diabetes insulin. Folks, look, as I said, it costs $10 to make. The drug companies charge more than 30 times that. And then again, imagine being that parent, not having the money. What do you do? What do you do? Just imagine. Well, you're going to keep fighting for lower drug costs, saving insulin for children and families as well, because if we keep the House and Senate this time, we are going to make sure it applies to everybody in the country. Guaranteed. Because the Inflation Reduction Act, seniors on Part D Medicare will also be able to get their recommended vaccines like shingles vaccines for free, no copay. And tomorrow will mark the beginning of Medicaid's open enrollment period. So when seniors pick plans for next year, they'll be able to take advantage of the progress we made. But that's not all. For years, the fee you pay for Medicare to cover your visits to your doctor's office have gone up. Now, for the first time in more than a decade, the fees are going to go down. And yesterday, we announced that Social Security benefits are going to be going up an average of $140 a month starting next month. And folks, look, seniors are going to get ahead of inflation next year. For the first time in 10 years, their Social Security checks are going to go up while Medicare premiums go down. This is a big deal for seniors. And this morning, I issued an executive order directing the Department of Health and Human Services within 90 days to put a plan on my desk finding an additional way to lower prescription drug costs for seniors, because there's other ways we can do this in addition. But we're not just focused on seniors. Earlier this week, the Treasury Department took action to fix a problem that was making it harder for families to afford health care coverage for their spouse or a child, the so-called family glitch rule. It's a glitch, all right. Under the old rules, a working mom was told as long as she could afford employer-based coverage for herself, she couldn't qualify for premium subsidies to afford coverage for her family. Well, now, 1 million people will gain coverage and pay lower premiums. Last year, a family of 4 with health coverage through the Affordable Care Act saved $2,400 from the American Rescue Plan that I signed into law. Now, Inflation Reduction Act is going to lock that in place for lower health care premiums for millions of families. Folks, and by the way, the drug companies are going to continue to do very well in terms of profit. We're not costing them anything other than they should get costs. But folks, let me tell you something. Every single Democrat, as in fact Katie spoke about, every single one voted for Inflation Reduction Act. Not a single solitary Republican in both the House of Representatives and the United States Senate voted for it. Every single one voted against it. Every single one. Not only that, now congressional Republicans are telling us their number one priority is to repeal, if they win back the House and Senate, repeal the Inflation Reduction Act.
All right, now before we get much further, let's analyze why not a single Republican voted in favor of this legislation, all right? Why did not a single Republican vote for the Inflation Reduction Act? Well, the number one reason is because this legislation is going to be extremely expensive, all right? The legislation will spend roughly $374 billion on decarbonization and climate resilience over the next 10 years. All right, so this bill is primarily a climate change reform bill. All right, so it's not entirely meant to help seniors and to reduce inflation. In fact, this part of the legislation is actually inflationary instead of deflationary. So this increases inflation. All right, so that's one of the main reasons why Republicans are not in favor of this bill. All right. Another reason is because Republicans believe that the Inflation Reduction Act is more of a Democratic wish list. All right. So here, Mitt Romney is quoted as saying, rather than listening to the American people who are suffering from inflation, Democrats have voted for a liberal wish list, primarily to reduce oil and gas production, all right, which, as I just mentioned, is an inflationary measure and will drive up the cost of gas. Now, on the other end, Republicans aren't entirely unwilling to address climate issues, all right, but they want to do it in a more planned and strategic and step-by-step fashion, whereas the liberals want to completely overhaul the system and pay for it all at once, all right? The Republicans want to tackle it in a more smaller, incremental way. So they've supported smaller, more incremental bills that tackle more limited aspects of the climate problem, all right? So they want to address it in a much more strategized and slow way so as not to increase inflation further than it's already been.
Well, let's be crystal clear about what that means. If Republicans in Congress have their way, it's going to mean the power we just gave Medicare to negotiate lower prescription drug prices and other costs over time goes away, gone. The $2,000 cap on prescription drugs goes away, gone. The $35 a month cap on insulin for Medicare is gone. Savings from health care premiums we just got for millions of Americans, gone. And of course, it's not the Inflation Reduction Act they want to get rid of. They're still determined to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. What people don't realize, they didn't realize the Affordable Care Act is the only basis upon which people with a pre-existing condition can get health care, unless you can afford an expensive policy. If Republicans have their way, that's gone as well. And here's the bottom line. So please hear this. When it actually comes time to do something about inflation around the kitchen table, Republicans in Congress are saying no. If Republicans take control, the prices are going to go up, as will inflation. It's this simple. Sadly, they go even further. Already a vast majority of the House Republicans have signed on to a Republican budget that's going to cut, hear me now, cut Medicare and Social Security. Cut it. Rick Scott, the senator from Florida, he's the head of the program to elect Republican senators. He has proposed a plan to put Social Security and Medicare in the chopping block every 5 years. If you don't vote for it again, it goes away. That means every 5 years, Congress will vote to cut, reduce, or completely eliminate Social Security and Medicare. And then there's Ron Johnson, the senator from Wisconsin. He thinks every 4 years, this is the God's truth. Do we have the pamphlets out here that they're pamphlets? Take a look at it. Their words, not mine. He thinks every 5 years is too long to wait. So he wants Social Security and Medicare to be in the chopping block every single solitary year. If Congress doesn't vote to keep it, it goes away. It goes away. Not just Social Security and Medicare. He wants to put veterans' benefits and everything else in the federal budget at risk. Folks, let me close with this. Over the last few years, we've faced some of the most difficult challenges in our history. But we're making real progress. We got a long way to go. But we're making real progress helping folks get a little more breathing room. Despite the opposition from some of the most powerful special interests in the nation, we're lowering health care costs and strengthening Medicare. And we're fighting for folks who need our help. It's one of the reasons why I'm so optimistic about America's future. We just have to remember who in God's name we are. This is the United States of America. No. Not a joke. Look, there's not ever been a damn thing we can't do when we've set our mind to it. Name me something we've ever tried to... You're smiling, but name me one. Name me one thing we've ever tried to accomplish that when we did it together, we haven't been able to do it. There's nothing beyond our capacity. And that's the God's truth. Think about it. And the American public over the last 5 years has begun to lose hope that it's within our power to do almost anything. But we really can. But we got to stick together. And I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican or an independent. The idea that people can charge 30, 40, 50, 60 times what it costs to make a drug, it just makes no sense when there's no alternative. It's not like you raise the price on a Chevy 10 times, you still can't go buy a Ford. I'm not joking. Well, there's no options. So, folks, I want to thank Katie for her incredible work, and I mean it. She is incredible in what she does. I mean it, Katie. And I want to say to all of you, God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
All right, so that about wraps up President Biden's speech regarding the Inflation Reduction Act and how he plans on improving the Medicare program. Please take with a grain of salt what he mentions about the Republicans putting Social Security and Medicare on the chopping block. All right, these are social programs that have been around since the 1940s and 1960s. And whenever we've had a Republican in power, whether that be in the Senate or in Congress or even the president, we've never ever actually considered putting Social Security and Medicare on the chopping block. All right. These are ploys by the Liberal Party to try and sway voters over to the Democrats right before the midterm elections. All right. Social Security and Medicare are protected social programs, and they're protected because people have been paying into them all of their lives for several decades now. All right. At no point will Medicare and Social Security go away. So I hope that gives you some sort of peace of mind after I've covered this topic. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, comment down below any information that you might have regarding your own Social Security or Medicare benefits. If you're interested in investing, you can click the Robinhood link in the description. And if you would like to listen to me while you drive in your car, you can listen to me on my new Spotify station. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Stay safe out there, stay hustling, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.